So it's January here in the Midwest, and that means deer season is wrapping up for me, and it's time for me to get back to fishing and getting serious about fishing. And here in the Midwest, it's cold, and we don't have a lot of good bass fishing, especially wintertime bass fishing. I'd have to go all the way to Table Rock or Lake of the Ozarks to do that. But I'll tell you what is hot right now, and it's the crappie fishing. And for me to get out, break my new boat in, experiment with techniques, rods, reels, really get dialed in on my live scope and everything. So it's a great time for me to do that. It's just the fish might be a little bit different. So set out for a local lake here, and hadn't been on the lake in probably 25 years, but I figured that's a good way for me to get out, do some homework, hunt the fish up, look for some fish, and then put my skills to the test, and went out for crappie. The crappie fishing's been really good, and thought I could maybe get us a mess of crappie for dinner, and got out there and started fishing around, and wasn't catching crappie. First I couldn't find them, and eventually I stumbled into them. I mean, the live scope, they're hard to hide with the live scope. So once I found them, I knew there was a lot of fish, so I dropped down and started catching some little white bass, and I was kind of bummed about that because I was hoping for some big crappie, and fished around, hunted around, kept looking for the crappie, and caught one or two small crappie, but went back to that spot just because if you're like me, I just like to catch fish, and dropped down and caught a bigger white bass. A really nice one. I was like, well, that's fun. And ultimately, if I'm out there on the water, if I'm not in a bass tournament, it's to have fun. And I got to think, I'm like, what is more fun, to catch a crappie or a white bass? And when I'm really playing with my live scope, I'm like, well, white bass are definitely fun. And these things were pound and a half. Some of them were probably 2 1/4 to 2 1/2 pounds. So they were a lot of fun. They really reminded me of fishing for spotted bass. And what was funny is I started out fishing, the standard for me when it's in the Midwest crappie fishing is just a good old eagle call, old school, ball head jig, either a 1/8 ounce or 1/4 ounce. A lot of times we'll use 2 1/8 ounce, but the 1/4 ounce, I found it falls faster. I can watch it better on live scope, and that works out great. I'm still using the same rod and reel setups that I use bass fishing. This is the same setup that I'll use for my lighter bass stuff, so it works great for me there. And then it gives me a chance to experiment and play with some of the new reels that Casting's got as well. But for me, it was the little 1/4 ounce ball head with a blackened chartreuse tube bait on the back, and it was cloudy, so blackened chartreuse, of course, is the color to go with. But what was funny is I had one of these Damiki style baits rigged up in my boat, just exactly what I would be doing bass fishing. This is the Eagle Claw. It's a laser sharp. It's the teardrop jig. It's got a little keeper on it, and I've just got the little shad bait on here. And what I had kind of made up my mind was, I went crappie fishing a few weeks ago, and we all use little tiny, like 2-inch tubes and all that stuff. Well, when I was filleting these crappie, they had shad in them that were 3 and 4 inches long. So I'm like, well, why wouldn't I just use what I use bass fishing? So I had one of these rigged up as well. And while I caught a few on the tube jig, ultimately I pulled this out and felt like I was fishing for bass, and I was catching white bass, and had a blast using the little teardrop jig with the little shad body style bait on the back of it. So it was cloudy, so black and chartreuse and white were good selections, and got out there and stretched the line a little bit and had a blast.